Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Copan Dying City from Holy Grail Games. Copan Dying City is a 1-4 player game in which Copan is slowly self-destructing and dying around you. That's the core premise of this game. This board, the resources, all of these things are going to start off nice and healthy and slowly get more and more depleted as the game progresses. Now before I continue, this is a Kickstarter, link to the crowdfunding project down below, and this is a prototype. All rules, components, all that stuff completely subject to change. Everything you see here, well, I mean, it's a prototype. It's a very nice prototype, but all that stuff subject to change. So, let's go ahead and dive into this. This, like I said already, is a 1-4 player game which the city is self-destructing around you. It's got areas of worker placement, tableau building, and a whole bunch of different things you can dive into the game. This is not a rules overview. We're covering the high level aspect of things going on, but there's a lot of different things and ways intermingle and all these different things, little worker placement aspects, bumping each other, different things. Basic idea of the game is you're trying to build up your tableau. You're trying to figure out ways you can score points because there's a bunch of different sections of the board, all of which will score points in different ways, and you have to figure out where you want to specialize. Specializing is a key part of this game because you get stronger and stronger at different things. You want to figure out where you're going to get your points, where you're going to get your in-game engine, how you're going to improve your resource collection because resources are slowly disappearing around the board. In the game, what you're going to do is you're going to have a bunch of tiles. You're going to have a few tiles you start the game with. There's ways to get more. You're going to take this yellow, placing it down over here, and because of that, we're going to both get 2 resources because of this tile over here. So we're going to go ahead and mark off 1 blue and 1 green, just because those are wild resources. We can grab those, but then additionally, we're going to go ahead and take 2 yellow because the strength of yellow is currently at 2. So we're going to go ahead and grab 2 yellow and then lower the strength of yellow by 1, and that's what we're going to do over there. Now, as you continue to place tiles, it's going to get more and more rewarding, at least at first. So if another player goes ahead and grabs their own tile, and they grab, let's take another color over here, let's think they grab a blue, and they place it down, what they're going to do is they're going to place a blue down, and they place it next to a yellow. They're going to go ahead, they did not put it on top of a resource spot, but they will go ahead, they will lower blue by 1, but then they'll take 2 blue and 2 yellow. For every one you touch, you will take, so as you start putting more and more tiles into the game engine, you are building up more and more resources, while also slowly declining the resources at the same time. Because if you notice, we are moving these little counters, whatever one you put down, you're moving the counter until slowly, you're going to start crossing lines. When you do so, a few things will happen. The first is once yellow is in a lower area, you'll notice you start getting 1 yellow for every yellow resource instead of 2. And over here, we're going to start getting 0 yellow in every resource. Basically, the resources in this game, all the things in this game are slowly collapsing around you. The city is falling apart, buildings are getting hit, different things are going away slowly but surely, and resources are becoming more and more scarce as the game progresses. So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing is as you cross these lines, 1, 2, and 3, and eventually, by the way, these will start triggering, pushing things around the board, so you're automatically be pushing things down as the game goes on. But as you cross these lines, you're going to go ahead and you're going to roll this die over here, and you're going to have effectively a disaster occur, in which you're going to look at this card, and there's a whole bunch of these different cards you can choose 1 per game. I don't need this whole stack. It's 1 per game. They affect the game length and just how harsh the dying city is going on around you. And you're going to look and see what catastrophe befalls the players, as well as which area of the board is going to be blocked up. What you're going to do is you're going to look at the color of the depleted area, the color that generated the resource thing. You're going to look at the card, the die rolled, and you're going to block off a section of the city. Depending on where you are, and we haven't fully explained all the areas, but depending on where you are, that means putting little markers to block these spots off, removing cards from play, so there'll be fewer and fewer cards coming out, blocking off these spots over here where you have these cards coming in, we'll talk more about these, and then slowly turning over and destroying these various cities you'll be going down to as well. So a whole bunch of things are just slowly falling apart. The resources are getting fewer as you place tiles, as those lines are crossed, resources will get fewer, spots of the board that you're trying to get things for your engine will become less and less available, and that's what's happening in the game state. That's all the high level. The actual turn structure, again, is you place a tile, you gather resources, then you're going to go ahead and move one of your markers around the board. So you're going to grab your marker, and in my case, I'm the blue player, and you choose where to put your marker. Your marker, in general, the first time you place it, let's just clear this out so you can see this over here. The first time you place your marker, you place it into an entry point in one of these regions around the board. So you place it into an entry point, you pay the resource cost shown, so in this case I have to pay a green, and then I can go ahead and take the action of that area. We'll talk about the actions more in a second, but you pay the resource cost shown, you take the action of the area. As you move your marker, though, instead of paying a resource, you'll move your marker here the next turn. So next turn, I can either, on my next turn, I can go somewhere else entirely, again, starting an action again, paying a resource, taking an action, or I can move it to the next spot over here, and over here, I'll take the benefit of my marker, depending on where it's on, I'll take the benefit times 1 or 2, and then I'll go ahead and take the action as well. So in other words, the first time you go to a spot in general, with one exception, you are paying a resource to go there, and the subsequent times you are getting things back, and so it benefits you to stay in the same spot multiple turns turns in a row, which also means planning out your turns multiple turns in advance, so you can try to figure out where you're going to want to go for the next 1, 2, or 3 turns as you go through it. Now, once your tile is on the last spot, you can't go to the same spot again. You have to go to an entirely different location and take the action of that location. Which brings us to the actual actions on the game. Let's cover what these action spots are. The first one, I'm just going to go around the board. The first one is the spot over here. This is the only spot you don't have to pay for, because you possibly could run out of resources. This will give you new tiles. So you'll take 2 new tiles, which can go into your hand. Alternatively, you can also pay a resource to take new tiles. Or alternatively, you can pay resources in order to get these extension boards. These extension boards will extend how many resources you can hold on to in your storeroom, and this is the part where you want to remember that Copan is a game of resources becoming less and less frequent as the game progresses. So having storerooms, that's a good thing. Having more resources when you can actually get them is a good thing, because as the game progresses, they'll be harder and harder to get. Then moving around the board, you'll have the opportunity to pay for these cards over here that will give you anything from endgame scoring to in-game bonuses to one-time effects, all giving you a bunch of different things. Over here we have 5 of those resources. Over here we have discounts in certain actions. Certain action spots will give you discounts. Over here we have an extension tile. You have a bunch of spots over here that you can get these cards. These cards will go on top of your player board area over here, which also means that as you gather more extension tiles, you're also gathering more spots to hold those ongoing cards. So that's another factor you're trying to be mindful of as you build out your engine and your game. Moving around the board over here, you also, let's cover one more thing over here. Over here, as you place your pieces on these spots, they will go into the left or the right courtyard, where they'll be eligible for point scoring at the end of the game, 6 or 3 for majorities, as well as an overall point scoring as well for whoever has the most majority there. In this spots down over here, you're going to go ahead and choose one of these actions over here. You'll pay the resources and you'll take the benefit of that spot, the lower and higher tier. The lower tiers over here are going to be moving up your people on these tracks, which we'll talk about in a second, and the higher tiers are whatever they show over there. Different opportunities, different point scoring. The last spots are often chunks of points. You get more resource tiles, discounts in various areas. Again, a whole bunch of ways you can do a bunch of things. And as far as these spots, this is a central mechanism of trying to move your people up, which we'll come back to shortly. Then we have over here, going to this area over here, this is where you're going to be collecting sets of cards. When you go here, you choose a row, 1, 2, or 3. You pay the resource cost shown next to the row. You also move your people up either 1, 2, or 3. So each row gives you either more or less cards, but more movement up these pyramids. So again, you get the opportunity to move your people up those spots, which we'll come back to. And then you have those sets of cards, and which at any point on your turn you can cash in one set of either the same or different cards to get a variety of jade pieces for your mask, which we'll talk about shortly, as well as if you turn in enough cards, you'll also get bonus actions possibly at a discount. And then lastly, we have going to those diplomat cities over here. We have the opportunity to go and place your markers on different cities, paying the resource cost to get there. So for example, putting a marker over here costs me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 resources. These ones would cost only 3, these ones would cost that additional 1, and these 2 would cost that additional 1, just a further pathway. Then pay the costs shown on that city and take the benefit as well. Additionally, at the end of the game, you're going to get points for how many of the cities you visited, anywhere between losing 10 points to getting as much as 40 points for visiting different cities. When you visit a city as well, depending on the level 1, 2, or 3 city, you'll go into this little box over here, grab a bonus tile for that city, and take whatever the benefit is shown. If I can grab one out over here, taking the benefits shown on that, getting an additional 3 steps up this track over here. So you'll choose those benefits as you go through it, and if you have more tiles, you can visit the city again a second time, paying those costs again, and taking multiple tiles for each spot you have there. You'll take more and more reward tiles from the city, making it more advantageous to continue to visit the same city again. You want to go to different cities to get that point scoring, but you want to go to the same city again and again because it gives you extra bonus tiles as you go through it. And those are the 5 main spots on the board. To cover 2 things we touched upon but didn't fully explain is, first of all, the Jade Mask. The Jade Mask will slowly be filled up, primarily through these cards, but other things will do so as well. And you're going to grab these tiles. The first tile you grab can be anywhere off the board, so you can go ahead and put these down, whereas when that's not an edge tile. We're going to have this one over here. You can grab any edge tile when you start your mask. So for example, I can put this down at one over here, taking the benefit underneath the mask. And then as you slowly move from there, you're going to start connecting them, getting all the benefits, and additionally getting points for some of these tiles, as well as 10 bonus points if you complete your Jade Mask. So the Jade Mask gives you these in-game rewards, as well as points at the end of the game, and you're slowly going to be building that out. And then lastly, we have this center pyramid. As your people ascend this pyramid over here, slowly moving up, you're going to get points for specializing. Because this is one of those things where, let's use the Jade Mask as an example. If at the beginning of the game, you currently are losing 2 points for every Jade Mask piece you put out. In other words, every time I add a Jade Mask piece, I'm going to lose 2 points. But as I advance up the pyramid, slowly but surely, I'll get to 0 to -1, to 0 to 1, and then to 2 points for every Jade Mask piece. Basically meaning that in these areas, in these 4 areas of the game, which are extension tiles, tiles, jade mask pieces, people that you have over here, pieces in the courtyard that you have, and then finally placements that you have over here in these 4 facets of the game. If you're going to invest in them, you kind of want to make sure you're moving your people up the pyramid, because if I don't ever put a jade mask piece out, then I don't need to move my person up the pyramid at all. It's one of those things where it kind of helps you to pick and choose where you want to specialize and think about what you're going to do, because if I'm going to get a bunch of extension tiles, then I definitely want to move up that extension tile track. Versus if I get extension tiles and don't move up that extension tile track, I'll be losing 6 points per extension tile. So you really want to think about what your strategy is going to be and how you pursue it. You're going to continue doing this until eventually game end is triggered. You're going to go ahead and game end is triggered by having these tracks slowly run out in the center, but you're going through that process, placing a tile in the center, gathering the resources, using those resources to fuel the other actions you take as you place your little pawn or whatever in these various areas, taking repeat actions, trying to figure out whether you're visiting cities, whether you're gathering people, getting some in-game resources, placing markers down here, getting more cards, and figuring out exactly how to chain all of that together to get as many points as possible in Copan Dying City. A few other small things we touched upon. There's some aspects of pushing pawns out, where you can push a pawn based on having more pawns in an area. Some other stuff we didn't heavily touch upon, what all these icons do when you have these disasters. Some of them can actually even be good, but that is basically what is going on in this game. Which brings us to the review, starting off with ease of play. Overall, the rulebook for this one is very short, very accessible. It's an easy game to dive into. There's a bunch of things and factors and sectors to be mindful of, but overall the game is fairly easy to teach. It's worker placement, it's a few sequences. You place a tile down, you gather resources, you place a pawn, you take that benefit, then there's a degree of repetition involved in those areas which you want to plan around, and then past that it's just explaining the 5 separate areas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate areas of the board, as well as how that pyramid point scoring works, and then of course your jade mask. A bunch of things going on, but overall it all ties together nicely. It's all very intuitive, all makes sense. The game comes in roughly 90 to 120 minutes. Generally I'd say closer to 90-minute range once you know it a little better. That first play is a little bit more just figuring out what happens in the game and where you're going to get your points from and how everything's going to score. But overall, last thing I didn't touch upon as well, as you get people up to this pyramid, you get additional bonus points, and these 14, 8, and 3 bonus points can absolutely matter a lot in this game. But that aside, going back to what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is, first of all, there's just a lot of pathways to choose. Copan gives you a lot of different areas to focus on. There's the one kind of resource area which is a general kind of catch-all, but then past that you have 4 separate marketplaces to choose from, and you have to think about how you want to commit to these areas on the board, because they all reward you in different ways and they all reward you well. They all give you chunks of extra points. Over here with these cities over here, you get these in-game bonuses plus giant chunks of 40 points depending on how things go. Some of these cards over here can be absolutely game-changing, especially if you combine them with the endgame scoring, with your resource board, with leveling up things over there. You'll get giant chunks of points. Over here, you'll get lots of movement up the tracks, helping you really get a lot of those over there, as well as, again, giant chunks of points just being given out in each of the areas of the board in different ways. Your jade mask, building that out, will give you a lot of areas, but you have to think where you want to focus. You cannot get everything done, and you need to be mindful of what you're going to do, both because of the fact that you have this pyramid scoring aspect, and which is going to incentivize you to focus on an area, because you'll get penalized for investing in an area a bit, but not moving up that pyramid, so you want to think about that. But additionally, because of the fact that you get locked into these actions, not locked in, you have the option to adjust or change, but you are incentivized to take 3 actions in a row in areas, and so you want to think through, if I start going through this track right now, am I prepared to commit to the next 3 actions, or are there other things that I'll want? Or alternatively, again, you could break whenever you need to. It incentivizes you to commit whenever you have a chance to do so. And so giving you all these different options, giving you these different pathways to pursue, these different ways of building your tableau, to add to your extension board, to add more people, to get chunks of just return bonus tiles for going to the same cities again and again and again, and loading up your tiles, versus going to different stories and different cities and getting points. Everything in the game gives you a bit of a... It gives you stuff. They all give you stuff, and they all give you different stuff in different ways, as you be mindful of the fact that there's going to be a preparation for starvation, which is the second thing. It's a huge part of the game. That starvation mode, and I highly recommend the game on some of the higher difficulty settings, because when you start the game off and you don't have that much starvation, your first game, if you start with the recommended tile, which I do recommend starting with the short game, lower difficulty one, but you're going to want to prep heavily for starvation in this game. It's a big part of the strategy, and it's very rewarding. Your first few turns of the game, your first half of the game, you won't feel that tightness of resources. The problem is you can only store so many resources unless you get extension boards, and so you have to figure out where you want to commit your engine again in different ways. What are you trying to do? How are you trying to ensure that you have everything you need? How are you trying to prep for the fact that things are slowly going away in this game? It's a big part of the game to be able to walk into that end game where no one's getting anything, where the board is just being cluttered up, and you still have enough to get through the hard times, because this game is all about that preparation, that early game everything versus the late game things are getting tight, and balancing around that. And the variability of the game length, and the punishing aspects of the game, the fact that you have the ability to adjust both game length, both the difficulty, that gives this game the option to play with different people who want different levels of experiences. I myself tend to be someone that doesn't like games that are that punishing. In Copan, I actually prefer it a little bit more punishing because of how available the resources are early game. That to me feels more impactful in my strategy, knowing that they're slowly going away as the game progresses. But it allows you to customize your experience while you think through what strategy you want to pursue, how the game is going to progress, which area you want to focus on, all of them being rewarding in different ways. And in general, in any game, you're focusing on a minimum of 2 areas like fully, and then touching upon what other areas you want to dabble in a little bit as you go through it. As far as things I don't like, the first thing is this game really does very heavily focus on you picking a specialty and sticking with it, which I don't mind in the game execution of the overall strategy. I don't love it in the locking in of your action cycles. The idea that as you go through a game, when I make a decision I'm going here, I'm really effectively deciding what my next 3 turns are. I'm going here, then here, then here, with the ability to break, for sure, with the ability to change and to break and to pivot and adjust based on what cards come out or what things happen, for sure. But at the end of the day, I feel like often I'm making a decision now that is really my next 3 turns and kind of locked into it, and I don't feel the game gives me enough of a reason for that to be something that I feel overly committed to. I often don't feel there's that much of a reason to break. The concept of the mechanic, the concept of being forced into an action, I don't mind that idea if you give me enough reasons to want to break from it, because then there's actually an interesting decision I play. Do I stick with an action that's going to be slightly better for my resource engine and resources are starting to get tight in the late game, or do I break because I really need to get that other card or ability or thing or happening in the game? I find that usually the game does not give me enough reasons to want to break from it, and so it feels more procedural than an aspect of a really tight strategy aspect. Secondly, I feel the bumping mechanic over here, the aspect of when you have a person over here and someone else goes in and knocks you, I feel that felt a little underutilized. The concept of getting in each other's way in this game doesn't happen nearly frequently enough, at least not in our games, and it's worth mentioning some areas of the board do get tighter at different player counts, but in general I just didn't feel the game was tight enough as far as the worker placement or bumping people for it to matter significantly enough. Again, I would have liked to see more interesting decisions around that aspect of the game. And the last complaint is a little different in the nature of it, but the last complaint is the fact that the jade mask is obnoxious. You have this giant pile of jade pieces over here, not mechanically speaking, just practically speaking. You have a giant pile of jade pieces, and when you want to fill that piece, you have to go ahead and figure out, well, this time I actually found it pretty quickly, but that's not the point over here. Very often, you're going to be trying to find a specific piece and rooting through your pile of pieces. The numbers are listed on the back, but they're not obvious, it's not easy to see. Mechanically speaking, this is a very cool concept that just looks cool, it's very pretty, very thematic, but practically speaking, I hope that it plays out differently. I don't know, again, prototype, all these things are prototypes, so keep that in mind. But overall, I found the jade mask as a gameplay mechanic to work totally fine, but as a rooting through a pile of pieces to find things mechanic, didn't love that extra aspect of it. As far as I can see others not liking, first of all, this game is very bright and shiny and peppy, and it's all about a dying city. But the board is going to be full of colors, you're adding things to the board wherever and however. Overall, the game is very exciting and very just peppy for a world of civilization that's dying all around you. And secondly, the diminishing returns aspect. The fact that as you go through the game, you get less and less and less. Normally, that's a mechanic that even I don't like. I happen to enjoy it in Copan Dying City because of how you're trying to spend the first half of the game prepping for the second half of the game, and it doesn't feel like you're getting weaker, it feels like you're planning, if that makes sense. Although, it's nitpicking because the same mechanic elsewhere could bother me, but here I overall like it. But while I do like it over here, I respect the fact that you might not. I respect the fact that you may not enjoy that as you're halfway through the game, things are getting less available and you have to plan around less availability. Your engine's getting better, what you can do in the game is getting better, but there might be less availability overall. As far as final thoughts on Copan Dying City, overall I really enjoyed this one. This one, the same people, the same company, same designers who made Encyclopedia, which is a game that I overall really loved. One of my favorite games of this year, I guess, of this past year. But overall, this one, Copan Dying City, gives me a lot of the same puzzly aspects, so a lot of the same interweaving things as you plan around what area you're going to go for, what areas you're going to pursue, which areas are going to give you different returns in different ways, and everything gives you stuff. There's a lot of opportunities for points scoring in so many different ways. A lot of opportunities to take this action that will let you take that action, that will cascade to that action. You do have those opportunities for those really fun, impactful turns. I do find the overall experience a drop less tight than I would like. Even with the harder difficulty cards, I want to feel a bit more constricted in the decision process that I'm making. Overall, while I like what Copan does and I like the higher level areas you can go for, I found that the in the moment decisions of what I'm doing from turn to turn often didn't feel as tight as I would like. Again, that aspect of feeling locked into 3 turns in a row meant that I often had things planned out and prepped and didn't have enough reason to break from that. So I like this one a lot. To me, this is a 4 out of 5. I like it. It gives me a lot of fun things. It gives you a lot of fun returns on different areas to go for. It gives you optional, lots of variability to the strategy, to the places you're going to go, lots of reasons to dive back into it again and again and again, and different ways to do so. Overall, really enjoy Copan Dying City. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Encyclopedia. I mentioned I love Encyclopedia, and that definitely holds true. Highly recommend Encyclopedia. I think it's a fantastic game. And then secondly, Copan almost to a degree reminded me a bit of Rajas of the Ganges. Very different gameplay mechanisms at play, but in terms of the overall areas you're trying to focus on, the fact that you can't get everything done, you have to figure out where to optimize, as well as thematically to a small degree, I think Rajas of the Ganges is another excellent game to take a look at. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.